Prior planning. One of the things you find with problem, reaction, solution every time, and it's obvious you're going to find it if it's a problem, reaction, solution, is that the solution is already in place before the problem is created. This is funny enough, I just put this up because this was an advert for fridges by General Electric about a year before 9/11, which was kind of prophetic. But anyway, there was a guy called Niyaz Naik. He was a former Pakistan foreign minister who said that immediately after 9/11 that he'd attended a meeting in Berlin in the summer of 2001, just in a few months before 9/11, at which American officials had told him they intended to invade Afghanistan before the snows came in mid-October to remove the Taliban and get bin Laden. And he said a number of things about how they intended to do it and all the rest of it. Virtually everything Niyaz Naik says he was told in the summer of 2001 and said immediately after 9/11, before there's any mention of invading Afghanistan, that he'd been told. Virtually everything unfolded in the months that followed. He was told, for instance, that this guy was going to be involved in the new government. Zahir Shah, the exiled king of Afghanistan, exiled in Rome, as a result of Karzai becoming leader, who was his representative. He's now ensconced back in the presidential palace in Kabul, exactly as Niyaz Naik was told. Interestingly, the British forces that took part in the invasion of Afghanistan did not leave Britain after September the 11th. They left on September the 3rd. The biggest military force, naval force, to leave these shores since the Falklands War left Portsmouth on September the 3rd. So by the time those planes hit those buildings, they were closing in on Oman, their destination, for exercises, exactly the place they needed to be to join in the invasion of Afghanistan, which was planned long before. So you have Karzai put into place. He comes into the presidential palace, and this is how it's possible to do it, by having this pyramid structure. You have over here, I've said Islamic terrorist network created the hijackers. That's just the official story, but I'm just saying, let's just talk about the way that could happen. Over there you have Illuminati networks that are involved in these terrorist groups. Over here you have Illuminati networks, pyramids, that control the United States government, the British government, and the FBI, CIA. But eventually there's a pyramid that encompasses both. And at that level of the pyramid, that level of the network, they can control both sides. They can control what happens and the non-response to what happens. It's the pyramid structure. Now, the vast majority of people, even in a terrorist network, will only get their orders from here. They won't know what's there and what's there. They only know what's here. And lots of these people involved in these terrorist networks have no idea who the real orchestrator of their terrorism is. And this is how they do it. One force manipulating both sides, creating the movie that creates the mind control of the people. So the solution, what has happened? More and more of our basic freedoms have been taken away. More and more they've got getting the public in America to spy on the public because of terrorism. It's a real hassle to speak out and say what you want. Homeland security, newspeak. Anywhere, anytime I see politicians mention the word security, what they're really saying is control. So now we have Homeland Security. Now, how about this for a quote? This is Adolf Hitler announcing why the Gestapo has to be formed. An evil exists that threatens every man, woman and child of this great nation. We must take steps to ensure our domestic security and protect our homeland. Could have come from George Bush, could have come from Tony Blair. Because we're seeing the same mentality in charge. You know, in America now, this is an FBI leaflet to people. They're actually talking about terrorists being people who want to, preserve the Constitution against the federal government. People who want to police the police. In other words, stop the police doing whatever they like. They're supposed to be terrorists according to that definition now. Okay. And here we are in the present day with the Illuminati going back to Babylon, or back to Iraq, as they would prefer to say. And again, behind it, in the shadows, are people like this guy. Saddam, Saddam, Saddam. Behind the little boy is put in front just to speak the words written for him. And it's interesting, when you look at George Bush, the father, and those he has invaded, like Noriega in Panama, people like Bin Laden, the connections between that which is invaded and the people that are the targets and the Bush family are there again. This fella was a member of the Safari Club, might still be, I don't know. The Safari Club was an elite secret society in the Middle East, working in the Illuminati web, that was fundamentally connected to another secret society in France called Les Cercles, or the Pinet Circle. And it involves intelligence agency representatives from the Western countries, and it interlocks with the Safari Club, which is the people of the Middle East in intelligence or what have you. Again, the web, where they're connected rather than, as the public think, apart. And he and Bush also had deals going for oil kickbacks in Iraq and other places. But everyone's expendable once it comes to the agenda and what's best for it. He invaded Father George Bush, Iraq in '91. And he was at the point where all he had to do to remove Saddam Hussein was to raise the money for the petrol to drive to Baghdad. Such disarray was the country in. But at that point, he calls the troops out, leaving the monster in there to be played another day. But they said, even though we've done that, he's still a monster and he's still there, and so we've got to have sanctions. So they introduce, Britain and America, sanctions. And the bombing continued. People think that the bombing stopped with the 1991 Gulf War and started again in 2003. They have been bombing in the no-fly zone of Iraq ever since. This is 1999. A little child pulled out of the rubble after an American bombing. And her sister was also killed in this bombing. Again and again, civilians have been picked off in the no-fly zone by these crazed people in planes playing computer games ever since. But the sanctions were absolutely fantastic. Some look-away pictures now. What actually happened in the 1991 Gulf War is they dropped so many bombs with depleted uranium that the leukemia figures in Iraq absolutely soared in the years since. In the last conflict in 2003, they dropped enormously more depleted uranium bombs than they did in '91. God knows what the future is going to be in that state. But there are also babies, more and more being born in Iraq with horrendous deformities because of the depleted uranium in the bombs that these crackpots are dropping. And here's just some of them. How many more are going to be born as a result of the bombardment of depleted uranium in the last few months? During the period of the sanctions, which of course immediately they take Iraq over, we want the sanctions dropped now, all right, get the oil out. By 1995, more than 1 million Iraqis have died, 567,000 of them children, as a direct consequence of economic sanctions. As many as 12% of the children surveyed in Baghdad are wasted, 28% stunted, and 29% underweight. The UN, December 1995. Are you watching, America? Go on, John, go get 'em! More than 4,500 children under the age of 5 are dying each month from hunger and disease. UNICEF, October 1996, as a result of the sanctions. CBS 60 Minutes program. Leslie Saul, the interviewer, talking to Madeleine Albright, the then Secretary of State. We have heard that 500,000 children have died as a result of sanctions against Iraq. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know what, is the price worth it? Madeleine Albright, I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it. Well, what did it achieve? They announced in the end, officially, it achieved bugger all, because they have to go and bomb them again. God bless America, land that I love. Let's blow the frigging world into the sky above. Go on, John, go get 'em. John Wayne, hey, good guy. No need for prophecy, Nostradamus, for what has unfolded in the last few months and is planned to unfold in the months to come unless we wake up. In the late 90s, an organization was formed in America called the Project for the New American Century. It was produced, and they produced a report in September 2000 that was a blueprint for the Bush administration that was planned to be scammed into power in the months that followed. These are the people who were behind the Project for the New American Century